As a fitting culmination of our evaluation week here in Asia, we like to invite the leaders of various evaluation groups, and this morning we're very privileged to have the heads of evaluation from EBRD, CABEI, OECD, IFAD, and IEG, a real alphabet soup of acronyms that I hope you all know what they mean, to reflect on the headlines as they see it after experiencing the past 3 days, as well as looking ahead over the next year, and indeed over the next 10 years. What are your evaluation headlines? So I'm going to go to each of my colleagues, and from your perspective, from your institutions, what are those headlines? Let me start first with Véronique from EBRD. Wait.
Good morning, everyone. I am live from Xi'an at the Asian Evaluation Week, where evaluators have been carving clarity from crisis, embracing agility with evaluation powered by tech, trust, and tenacity. So in times of changing worlds and crisis, evaluation must be fiercely relevant and useful, adapting at pace to provide evidence when it's most needed, powered by a responsible use of tech, anchored in our key principles of independence, objectivity, and rigor.
Thanks, Véronique. Let me now ask my colleague, José, from CABEI, Central America, outside the region. What is your headline?
Good day, everyone. Have a good day, everyone. Evaluation as a strategic compass, navigating change, technology, and uncertainty in Central America. The first reason why I linked this headline to the Latin American and Caribbean region is to illustrate, to demonstrate how connected is the world and how the uncertainty and the change is provoking an economic disintegration through tariffs, through the trade tariffs from US, the reduction of cooperation, the immigration stress in the Central American and the whole Latin American region. Also to connect the technology speed in which we are having changes, in improvements of transparency, but also challenges to don't reproduce structural problems from the past. And in this shift of changes, how evaluation is becoming a compass based on evidence, based on dialogue, based on engagement.
Thanks a lot, Jose. And now let me turn to the view from the OECD. So, Megan, over to you.
Thank you all so much. My headline this morning is not only a headline, but a call for action. As we're navigating the troubled waters today, we see that sometimes we need to row our own boats faster, but sometimes we also need to know when we should tie our small boats together as we're navigating towards the common goal. The lighthouse that guides us through these uncertain and turbulent times is our contribution to improving the outcomes for people and the planet, and making sure that we're all working together to pull in the same direction as evaluators. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Megan. And now the view from IFAD. Indran, over to you, please.
Greetings, everyone, from IFAD. My headline is, how do we sharpen focus amidst blurring boundaries, navigating the cross-currents in a reconfigured world? We're in a time when we have very strong push and pull forces, many of which are counterproductive and have actually not assisted in reducing climate change, have not assisted in reducing poverty and inequality. Food remains critical, and the question is, how do we remain the lighthouse and the anchor in these turbulent times? Thank you.
Thank you so much, Indran. And finally, over to you, Sabine, the view from the World Bank Group.
Good morning, everyone. My headline headline this morning is Agility, Independence, and Responsible Tech, Evaluation in a High-Stakes World. In a world of fast change, increased uncertainty, and shifting geopolitical and aid landscape, we need agile evaluation systems, both independent and self-evaluation, that focus on outcomes, on systems, and facilitate learning and adaptation. At the same time, we need to stay the course and avoid instrumentalization, and we need to leverage data responsibly.
Thank you so much. How about a round of applause for these headlines? Inspiring words indeed, but what do they mean? So let's have a conversation about those inspiring words. It's kind of difficult, and as a moderator, it's a huge challenge because these ideas are just so profound. In thinking about them, and I must admit that we did try to have a session beforehand to see whether there are any common threads among them. I think there are basically three, but one overall theme about across all of them is that the theme of this year is navigating crises because there are uncertain times. The one overriding theme that I get is be prepared for more of those uncertain times. That is unlikely to change. In fact, it may even be worse in the next year, perhaps the next few years, in terms of just the degree of unpredictability of the world we live in, which is multipolar and subject to many more forces outside our direct control. Let me suggest, though, that there are three issues that all of my colleagues have brought up that might help us to navigate the uncertainty going forward. One, I think they all called for more agility. Secondly, they all called for more interaction and collaboration. And the third is they all called for us to harness technology more responsibly. So I want to get to each of those, if I may. So on agility. So we had some conversations actually earlier this week on how this takes us as evaluators a bit of our comfort zone. I don't know how about you, but I've gotten very well used to 3-year rolling work programs, which does give us a sense of predictability in our world. But going forward, what we're seeing is that the institutions that we're evaluating are having to move more quickly to adjust what they're doing, and they're asking for us, our views on how they can do that better. So I'm going to turn to my colleagues, and I have not rehearsed an order of this, so they might be in for a bit of surprise. But Sabine, I'm going to turn to you first, since you're on my left here, on your views on agility. What does it mean for the World Bank? I used to work there, and I knew that we were not known as the most agile institution in the past.
Thank you. Thanks, Manny. It's a big question and a very important one. Let me, as I was thinking about this, I think I'd like to speak about two aspects. Building agility into our work programs and our work as independent evaluation functions, but also building agility into the whole evaluation system of the World Bank, so including the self-evaluation work that the World Bank itself does. So on the one hand, I think in a world of fast change, increasing uncertainty, multiple and compounding crises, it's important that we develop our work programs with agility. So on the one hand, we need to be able to be responsive with just-in-time notes, early stage evaluation. The bank is implementing new initiatives all the time, and it wants information on what works and what doesn't very early. It doesn't want to wait until the end for evaluation. It also wants evaluation syntheses to inform its decisions. On the other hand, I think it's very important that we don't get swayed by, like leaves in the wind, that we need to stay the course and we need to focus on the longer term objectives of the institution. And the way that we do that in IG is we've developed theories of change for all of the work that the World Bank Group is doing. Very elaborate, nested theories of change, and we develop our work program around that so that we're focusing on the long-term objectives of poverty, shared prosperity, climate, gender, etc. So on the one hand, we build in flexibility to respond to the emerging needs. On the other hand, we try to stay the course on the long-term objectives. The second major point I wanted to say is, I think what's very important is that the systems that we built for self-evaluation 30 years ago, 40 years ago, are really no longer fit for purpose. They were built at a time when the bank was mainly doing infrastructure project finance, where you could just measure the outputs and maybe the outcomes of the projects. Now the bank supports countries' systems through loans, through advisory, through knowledge, through convening, through many different ways. So we really need to build monitoring, evaluation, and learning systems that are country-focused, system-focused, outcome-focused, and allow the bank to adapt, to be more flexible. So build in learning moments in the self-evaluation system that allows the bank to learn what's working and what's not working and adapt. So those are the two main things I'd like to put forward at this point. Thanks.
Now that's great, Sabine. And I'd like to turn to my other MDB colleagues first then, before I turn over to you, Megan, on the two issues that Sabine raised, whether they resonate with you, on the need for our work program to be agile, and to really the need to look at our basic tools and whether or not they need to be repurposed in some way. So Indran, if I could turn to you next, your views from IFAD on this issue of what does it mean to be more agile?
Thank you very much, Manny. One of the challenges that all evaluation officers have, it needs to balance predictability with flexibility. So we have a multi-year work plan that runs on a 3-year cycle, but each year we refresh it by looking at what are the emerging issues. And emerging issues will also relate to where are the hotspots and crises. So for example, we have increased the overall coverage by 300% in the multi-year work plan. From doing an average of 4, we now do 14 countries, but that's not good enough. What's more important is within that portfolio, the different questions and issues need to be addressed much faster. The challenge at the evaluators, we tend to take long and we produce reports that are difficult to digest. AI comes in, it assists us, but by the same token, it's not going to sort out all the problems. So we need to ensure that we have the engagement, which also takes long, keep the credibility, but also produce work that has a higher utility for the various stakeholders, which are not just the management and the government, but the other players. The second element is none of the colleagues here and their organizations work individually. We work as partners. So what does it mean to evaluate as one and to work in coalitions? Because the challenge we always have is attribution and contribution. No single organization can take claim for results. So it's not just about the accountability, but the learning, but the ability to rapidly move to what are the emerging issues which are coming. And the periodicity of change is much more frequent now than it's ever been in history. Thank you, Manny.
Thanks, Indran. And we want to get back to this theme of working as one, because I think in the past anyway, working as 2 or 3 or 4 often took a little more time than working as one. But let's turn to you, Véronique, from EBRD's perspective, agility.
Well, thank you. I think from EBRD's perspective, we have also at stake to take into account the private sector element, and that means that definitely agility is even more important. But agility should not be taken for speed. It's not the same. You can be very fast and not agile, because if you apply the same solutions to different issues just very rapidly, it's not being agile. And that's one point that we made in our real-time evaluation of EBRD support to the private sector during the COVID crisis, they were very, very happy and saying that they were agile, and we came with an evaluation saying, you were very fast, but you were not agile because you were not listening enough. And I think that's really something that we can include. When we talk about agility, it's not just about responding rapidly, it's about being responsive. So that means listening to the demand, especially the demand of the private sector, but in other areas, the demand also of the beneficiaries, of the countries, being sure that our solutions are adapted. And it's the same for evaluation, bringing the adapted solution. And the second point I want to make is that agility requires still some balance. In evaluation, we've been having the luxury of time, in a way. We come late, we take the time to investigate, we collect data, and then we give our results. I think it's a privilege that we should not completely ignore. We should keep this privilege of having the time to go in depth, to have deep dives into our project, looking at what really worked, what didn't work. So we need to keep this balance between the short term and the long term. Sabine was saying that we need to also keep an eye on all of the big priorities of poverty reduction. And I think it's our responsibility to not be taken into this fast new paradigm, but we need to continue to know where we are going.
Really, really interesting point, a very important one for us to distinguish between agility and speed of response. And that, in fact, but we may be more effective if we tell them we're going to be responsive, but hold on, this might take time. If I could now turn to you, José.
Thanks, Manny. Let me make 3 comments related with the issue of agility. The first comment has to do with the flexibility and agility of the working program to respond to what the decision takers, the board, the community in which we are working is expecting. In that sense, we have to put an eye to the sequential processes. Evaluation offices and the evaluation practice as a whole used to have information about data, about lessons learned, about what worked in the past, what didn't work, and I think we should contribute to the design, to the rapid responses in the uncertainty with agility, but based on the information we already have. Taking care of, for example, how the institutional memory and the sequential processes to move the institution, to move the society, to move the context from the point A to the point B is going to be based on evidence. The second comment is related to the co-construction of added value. We are called to be part of a model, a business model in which the multilateral development banks work. So we are part of that added value chain in the institution. So the co-construction of added value is very important. So we should take part of that discussion in the institution, contributing to that added value in the business model. The third comment has to do, related to the agility, when we are under uncertainty, we need agility, we have to move from marginal solutions, marginal movements solutions, to transformational solutions. For example, during this week, talking about private sector, talking about SMEs, talking about green financing, we have been discussing that, for example, multilateral development banks are canalizing resources through the financial system. But those resources in which you can see the financial additionality is less than 1% of the GDP in the regions in which we are working. However, the financial system's portfolios in the regions in which we are working is more than 50% of GDP. So we could put an eye on the evidence on that and try to propose transformational solutions in the region, in our regions. In this way, we could contribute to shape adaptation with evidence and with rationale. Thank you.
Thanks a lot, Jose. In fact, you brought up an additional point, which is not in your original headline or anyone else's, but the need to be transformational, which was also a theme that came across, and certainly people can comment on that. But first, let me turn to Megan. focus on agility, but also I think we've segued a little bit, especially on a point that Indran raised on collaboration. I know that's a topic near and dear to you at OECD. But so if you could address both topics, agility, especially perhaps from your bilateral perspective, and secondly, on why do you think we need to work together?
Great, thank you for those excellent questions. And I would like to address agility from two perspectives. One, in terms of how we work as evaluators and evaluation functions. And the second, in terms of how we serve as enabling factors for our institutions and our countries as they're responding to crisis. And I think that second aspect, I'll bring in a bit more the partnerships as well. On the first of how we as evaluators work in crisis contexts and to be agile ourselves, I think we really have to take our own medicine in terms of applying a strict cost-benefit analysis to our own work. And I think we've heard from several of the colleagues examples of where some of our tools, especially our more routine types of evaluation and monitoring work, maybe are not fully fit for practice. And what we see among the OECD development agencies of bilateral development actors is a huge increase in demand on evaluation units. They're being called on to do things at a speed and at a scale, but also answering questions that they have not been asked to answer in the past. And so I think it's really important that we are careful about when we choose to evaluate and how, and that we use methods that are most geared towards our objectives. And I think we also need to up our game in terms of testing some of our underlying assumptions around how people learn and what the role of evaluation actually is. Because I think often we're assuming things. For example, no one reads long reports. We only have to do everything very short, one-pagers with lots of graphics. That's actually an assumption, and we might do better to test our assumptions. Another assumption we make is about the applicability of lessons across different contexts. And that's where I think we need to kind of think a bit more about how do we actually recycle, reuse, reduce our evaluation and evidence into being more efficient as a whole collective. I sometimes have the impression that everything has been evaluated, but not everyone has evaluated it. And so I think we have sometimes a bit of an institutional blockage where each institution is sort of carrying on, redoing similar things. So turning very quickly to how do we support our institutions in the context, one of the key lessons that we learned in evaluating the global collective response and international assistance provided during the COVID pandemic was the need for much greater attention on unintended effects. One benefit of a crisis is that it focuses our mind, and therefore we can move very quickly, overcome barriers to take action. But the downside or the trade-off is that we may not be paying sufficient attention to unintended and unexpected effects. And we also see many times that the actions of the same institutions in other policy areas may be undermining our very effective efforts in development cooperation. So I think that's one area where we can do better to support our institutions as they're responding to times of crisis. Turning then to your question on partnerships, I really see this as a critical moment where our national partners in country evaluation systems, it is your moment to step up and step forward. As the resources for international development assistance drop, we also need our development partners to step back. And that means less of a focus on our narrow sort of accountability-driven evaluations and more support to understanding long-term transformational change. And that means partnering better with our counterparts in developing countries. And this is something, of course, we've been working towards and aiming for many decades at the OECD to strengthen national systems and use them. But I think now is really the moment where we have to walk the talk. Thank you.
Thanks, Megan. And in a world where, as we mentioned earlier, global cooperation is not as much in vogue as it used to be, what you're calling for is for evaluators to take the lead and do that. But it's really hard. So I would like to turn to my colleagues from the MDBs, just coincidentally, but your perspective on if it's such a great idea to work more closely together, why haven't we done it yet? And what can we do to make sure this happens? So this is open to anyone who'd like to address this question. Any views? Véronique, you're about to take the mic, so over to you.
Maybe I can get started. you're right that we keep saying or recommending in our evaluation to operation departments that they should collaborate more, that they should coordinate more also with other organizations, and that's what we call the internal and sometimes external coherence also, that everything should be done collectively, but we are ourselves in evaluation not always so good at doing it. Just one example, 2 years ago, we put on our work program a joint evaluation with another IFI. We went around and nobody wanted to work with us on a joint evaluation, but for many reasons and very good reasons, you know, not enough resources, it was not on the work plan, or some of the projects were not their priorities. So we finally had a plea at an EBRD meeting in Paris, and we said, you know, openly, I said, does anyone want to have a joint evaluation with us? And we are doing one with bilateral. So that's also very good. Collaboration with bilaterals is also important. Just to say that it's not that easy to work together. But I think that there is definitely a huge opportunity to work together now. The fact that we're all here in this room and that we have been exchanging is already a testimony to the willingness of working together. So it's already a step. If we are all willing to work together, then we have already gained the first step. The second step is how do we work together? And we should not be trying to be too complicated about it. It doesn't even need to be joint evaluation. First thing is that we can coordinate our work better. In the evaluation cooperation group, we share our work program once they have been developed. What about we take a step back and we start talking about our work program as we are developing them, so that we can also talk about the type of topics we are covering, and then we can even share information as we are developing our approaches, what type of indicators are we using, so that we can at the end, even though we both institution or other institution, we all have our own process and evaluation, at the end we know that our findings will be comparable. We are starting to do that with the EIB on evaluating the impact of evaluation. Another way of coordinating or working better together is taking advantage of the technology, and I know we'll be talking more about it, but there is a huge opportunity these days. There are risks too, and we can talk about it, but there is a huge opportunity for having data that we share, shared platform where we can have all our findings together. EVA in ADB, Lessons Bot in EBRD, we are starting to put together all our evaluation reports for easy access to all, and I think we should continue to look for different ways of collaborating using technology.
No, thanks. Really, there are long-hanging fruits out there, no matter how difficult. Perhaps like the dish that we had a couple of days ago. These are like the smile of the concubine, in which you had shrimp balls that look like lychees that you could just pluck off the tree. Great Sion dish. But Sabine, I was going to turn to you anyway, because in fact we're going to be forced to do this because of the mutual reliance framework between the ADB and the World Bank. So over to you.
Thanks, Manny. I just wanted to very quickly jump on what Véronique's saying. So I fully agree with everything Véronique said. And one thing that comes to mind is, you know, we've been, I think, in one way or another, trying to do this for the last 40, 50 years, and we haven't managed. And all it took was leadership, I think. Leadership at the top of our institutions, in this case, the president of the World Bank and the president of ADB got together and said, enough of this. We have to have mutual reliance. We can't have, you know, different two different teams appraising, having their own appraisal procedures for the same project, and then evaluation comes in and does two different evaluations, and it's inefficient, we're duplicate. We've known this for decades, but somehow we never managed to do anything, and it took leadership, and I think this is a really important lesson learned, and I think it's encouraging for the future. So even in terms of, as Véronique was saying, we need to learn from each other's evaluations. All these different regional MDBs do the same kind of projects and evaluate the same kind of, we all have evaluations on climate change adaptation, gender, infrastructure. We're all doing the same things. So we need to somehow convince the leadership that our institutions have to be interested in learning lessons from the others so we stop duplicating.
Thanks. Really important point, very practical point. Indran, you were the one who raised this in the first place. So on partnerships and collaboration, what is your perspective on how we can do better at this?
Thank you very much, Manny, and the colleagues agree with the points that have been made. Part of it is how we view ourselves as evaluators. We think and work upwards and do not look sideways. So when it comes to collaboration, it becomes a great challenge. There was an evaluation done in Rome, independent evaluation of Rome-based agencies' collaboration, and it found there was very limited collaboration. That was about 3 years ago. Nothing much has changed since then. I believe that the crisis that we are in now is going to force us to actually work and collaborate sideways, because if we don't, there's other tools that are moving in like AI and other partners who are able to do synthesis really well and provide information to decision makers and leave us way, way behind. In my former role as head of evaluation at UNDP, we also spoke about joint evaluation collaboration. That was for about 8 years. Very little has moved in. But now I think we don't have a choice. The crisis helps. And if we want to remain relevant and in the business, we have to do this. Thank you.
Thanks. Jose, over to you from the CABEI point of view, as well as an experienced evaluator.
In our case, we agree with the colleagues in the sense that, for example, we should join efforts since the creation of the strategies and the programmatic interventions of our institutions in the different regions. Not just at the evaluation side, but also since the beginning. These agendas of mutual reliance, I think, is very strategic. It's very important to move in that direction. Also, when I mentioned the strategic definition of the institutions in our regions since the beginning, and also the programmatic interventions, I'm mentioning, for example, to later on co-finance initiatives, designing public policies with the countries, for example, in which we join efforts, we share visions, we share evidence of what works or what doesn't work at the regional or at the local level. Because sometimes you can see policy-based loans, for example, being designed for the different multilateral development banks with not the same vision. So when you do the evaluation of that, you can identify that we lost value there. Another agenda we should move forward as well is the unification of standards and guidelines for different sectoral interventions. For example, there is a high potential on that. Because all of us are working in SMEs, economic integration, poverty reduction, climate change. So there is a high potential to align the guidelines in which we work. On the other side, I think if we join those efforts, we are going to join agendas and also shape solutions in this uncertainty and in crisis times. Thank you.
No, and I'm glad you mentioned the call for aligning guidelines. And I know that Sabine, you earlier raised this point about the need to look at this as part of our attempt to be more agile. And I know the evaluation cooperation group is in fact looking at the good practice standards, and you've been involved with that a little bit more closely, Sabine. Any updates you can tell the world on the timeline for these guidelines revisions?
Yes, sure, Manny. I think, yes, for those of you who are not familiar, the ECG has these good practice standards for self-evaluation and validation, both of sovereign and non-sovereign operations, and we're working to update, and so we're working to update them because it's been a long time. The work should be finished, I hope, within the next year, in this coming year. But very importantly, we're working also in the context of this mutual reliance. So we now have a mutual reliance initiative between the World Bank and the ADB. There's one being discussed with the Inter-American Development Bank and many others. So definitely this is the direction. Since I have the mic, can I just add one tiny point very quickly that Megan mentioned about supporting, I think we need more country-driven evaluation. So one way for us to cooperate is to support the country in driving monitoring and evaluation, and the MDBs coming together in support of that, as opposed to all of us kind of doing our own thing.
No, that's great, and I'm glad you raised that, because it is a question of what we can do as evaluators to support evaluation systems in countries. We have the knowledge, but we don't have the bucks. It's the operational parts of our institutions that have that mandate. I think it's incumbent on us to work across the aisle to ensure that we have that perspective in mind. I'm conscious of the time, and I want to give time for the audience also. So there's still a third topic that we need to discuss, and that's technology. As a relative Luddite, I'm scared of the topic, but it's coming, and it's here already, and it's going to affect us. We already heard some examples of the ways in which evaluation is embracing this. But Véronique, you've been leading on this issue for some time before it even became popular, because the EVA tool in the ADB was inspired by you when you were at ADB. So over to you first.
Well, thank you very much. Yes, I've always been inspired by AI. Not that I think that it's a wonderful tool that will solve everything, or not because I'm not aware that there are some risks, but just because I think it's here. It's for us to use. It's already in our day-to-day life, and we have to embrace it as an opportunity for us to improve evaluation in many ways. First, so it is an opportunity. We can have digital platform. We talked about collaboration, mutual reliance. It was maybe too difficult before, but now with artificial intelligence and new tools, we can do it at a lesser cost. So it is time to do it now. It's where we can use artificial intelligence also for speeding the feedback loops. And just one example, you mentioned EVA Lessons Bot. There are like chat box where you use natural language to ask questions. For example, what have we learned from evaluation regarding infrastructure investment in Southeast Asia? And you will, artificial intelligence will extract the key information coming from different evaluation reports. In Lessons Bots, we have our EBRD evaluation reports since 2014, but we also downloaded or uploaded the evaluation reports from our colleagues. And my play here is to say, let's not develop our own tools, each one of us having our own Lessons Bot or EVA. I would love to use either EVA, Lessons Bot, improve it, and make sure that we all use it as a common tool. That's mutual reliance. That's where we'll have, in one place, access to evaluation findings we can start with MDBs and then maybe enlarge it, but that's collaboration. Just the last word on the risk. There are risks of data privacy, lack of transparency, maybe algorithms, biases, over-reliance on automatic conclusions. So we should all be aware of that. And I think it's about time that we all reflect on guidances for evaluation on how to use tech responsibly.
No, thanks. In fact, one of the things that we're doing in the ADB is having a primer on how to manage the use of AI for managers like me, who really hasn't a clue what guidance to give our staff. But Megan, you've been a proponent of this as well, and as Véronique mentioned, it really could be a tool to help bridge the gaps between institutions.
Yeah, thank you so much. And I would join Véronique in her call that we really try to not each reinvent the wheel here, but really work together. And at the OECD, we manage the Development Assistance Committee's Evaluation Resource Center, DEREC, which is a one-stop shop for evaluations of international development cooperation. And it was actually started quite a few years ago by our Canadian colleagues who would gather evaluation reports and copy them onto a CD-ROM, which they would mail out to each partner. And that was our first attempt to help share evaluations across the community. So we've come a long way, and I think we're really looking now at our DEREC 3.0 and how we can embed some of these technologies. I just want to say that what really gets me excited about the use of some of the new technologies in AI and not so new even technologies is the hope that really they can help sort of clear out the bottom level of the poorest quality designed interventions. I think we often talk about sort of our overarching guidance, the DDSS guidance, which is don't do stupid stuff. And I think we've all seen an evaluation that was costly and discovered a project that you thought, wow, this really shouldn't have been designed in this way, and we surely could have caught it sooner. So maybe AI can help us improve the quality at entry so that then we as evaluators can focus our efforts and our resources on higher quality, more value add, such as more participatory data collection with impacted communities, and also doing more methodologically quality, credible causal analysis, for example, and take that burden off our shoulders.
I'm sure someone in the audience is already in Deep Six or chat box asking, what is the stupidest development project ever invented? But other colleagues on the left-hand side who'd like to comment on technology?
Very quick one. I attended a conference in Geneva, AI for Good. I mean, just the title of that is packed with assumptions. Let's not confuse the technology with the intellectual rigor and the logic. There's a word that you hear, which is hallucinations. So you can take an evaluation report, which your office has found to be negative of a program. Management, if it uses the right prompts, can get that same report to say the program was excellent. Just be very, very careful about the risk and the hallucinations. Thank you.
Excellent, excellent advice. Anyone else who wants to say anything? Jose, and then to Sabine.
We agree with what Indran mentioned. We have seen that, for example, in technology, when we have been moving from open data to dashboards to artificial intelligence, it improves the efficiency and also the accuracy of the evaluation practice, also the transparency of the institution, but need to be embedded with governance in the use of technology, the culture, the supportive culture in the institution, and avoid that during the design and during the implementation, you continue with the invisibility of certain social dimensions, certain development dimensions, because of lack of data or because the technology gaps. So we have to create a boost, inclusive adoption of the technology. Thank you.
Thank you, Jose. Sabine.
Thank you. I'll try to be very quick and just complement what others have said. So IEG's been using AI and experimenting with AI for about 10 years now, and we've been doing it slowly, step by step, learning and improving. Some of the things, so we use AI in our evaluations almost systematically. All our evaluations use AI in one way or another. For example, we've developed an app for portfolio analysis. We use geospatial analysis. We use it for classifying, identifying. We also use it for evaluation synthesis, as Véronique was saying, and I totally support what she said about not duplicating these synthesis tools like the lessons bot. We should use the same one. And we also use it in validation of self-evaluation. I think one very important thing that someone else mentioned was the training and capacity. So we're building our capacity in our own team with a data science team, but we're also very important, have to educate managers and leaders. I think very important, because if we don't understand, at least have a superficial understanding, then we're not able to lead our teams. But what I would really like to emphasize is, so it's very positive, it increases efficiency, it allows us to ask different questions, there are a lot of positive aspects, but we have to be aware of the risks and limitations, and we must work with our institutions to set up responsible good governance. And 2 points that two risks that others have not mentioned that I think are important are equity risks. So typically the most vulnerable populations are often least represented in digital systems, and there's a big risk that we leave the voices of the poorest and most vulnerable behind. And the second is cultural and contextual blind spots. So a lot of the data that AI is mining is Western led data, it's English language data, it's RCT heavy, so there's not much variety in there. Thank you.
Oh, thanks. Excellent, excellent caveats to the points. Now, I'd like to turn it over to the audience for questions. In the spirit of this session, please make your questions as crisp as the headlines that you've seen. So 1 or 2 sentences max. I cannot actually see anybody, so I'll leave it to my colleagues who have mics to please just distribute around the room. Very quick, I'm going to take about 3 or 4, and then I'll leave it to the panel. Identify yourself, please, and just speak as you get the microphone.
Hi, Manny. Garrett Kilroy over here. Hi. Hi, Manny. I'm Garrett Kilroy from Independent Evaluation at ADB. Just to get back to the question, the topic of joint evaluations, and we've all had mixed sort of experiences in that, but the ones that I've been involved in, the problems usually are at the back end. We're trying to join things up and we have different criteria and different requirements for our boards. But the most sort of fruitful and enjoyable and beneficial aspects is actually, our joint missions, where we reduce the burden to the governments. We don't obviously have to overlap in all the interviews, but where we do, we get to hear direct insights from the questioning from our counterparts. So I'm just wondering if there's, rather than sort of outright sort of reluctance to go down that route, is there sort of a middle way where we can look at sort of the beneficial aspects that are maybe easier to manage?
Okay, thanks. Whoever has the mic can speak, please.
Thank you. It's Emily Sharp from the Pacific Community. Thanks for an inspiring panel, and I'd like to riff off my colleague here first question. I'd like to understand in the theory of change that you're exploring in terms of the benefits around collaboration and partnerships, if you have taken into consideration, in addition to the effectiveness and efficiency benefits for your organizations, what are the benefits to your evaluands? What are the benefits to the countries whom you are evaluating from your partnerships and collaborations, and what might that look like for them?
Okay.
What benefits are they requiring? Thank you.
Thank you very much. Who was there another mic? Please get the mic over to that person.
Here, thank you. My name is Justin Dongjie. I'm from China. I'm also UNESCO Youth Ambassador for COP29 World Economic Forum, Davos New Champion Delegate, also a member of EVO Youth China. So it's my great honor to participate in Asian Evaluation Week as a young emerging evaluator. So my point may not be a question, but rather than an appeal. So I hope to see more opportunities create for you young emerging evaluators under 13 years old. I also hope institutions present today to have more cooperation with young youth evaluation organizations. So by standing on the shoulders of giants like you, so we younger generation can see further, contribute more effectively to integrating evaluation into national development and the advancement of the SDGs in the future. Thank you.
Thank you. One last one.
Oh, yeah. Thank you, Manny. This is Owen Malloy. I'm also from the Asian Development Bank Independent Evaluation Department. Just a quick point on picking up from the colleagues' mention of the SDGs. So if we're speaking about joint evaluation, it's 2025. We have a 5-year horizon now ahead of us. I'm here linking to a call also that I heard at the South Asia Evaluation Conclave earlier in this year from Michael Quinn Patton, calling for this concerted effort to jointly evaluate the SDGs. And I know this is kind of coming in and out of favor, but just it would be interesting to hear this perspective from the Evaluation Cooperation Group as well on this. Thank you.
Okay, one last one. Thank you, Owen. Anyone else?
Hi, my name is Sohini. I have a quick question. So there was a lot of discussion on partnerships and collaboration. But I think where things break down is when we start thinking a little bit about ourselves in the process and the attribution. So are there any thoughts on how do we navigate that so that contributions and so that collaborations actually happen in practice? Yeah, thanks.
Thanks a lot. Okay, I'm now going to turn it over to our headliners. I won't assign any of these points to anyone, just who wants to volunteer. There are issues raised about joint missions and opportunities. The theory of change, how is it going to benefit the ultimate beneficiaries for us to work together? Youth, SDGs, and metrics. Who'd like to comment on any? If not, we can go to lunch. No? Okay, Jose.
Okay. Well, I was just reminding, that to start, we can mention, for example, Paris Declaration, in which we want, to have harmonization as the cooperation to the country. So one of the first benefits from this, and actually it's a principle of ECG as well, to work in the harmonization of the evaluation practices. So one of the first benefits of this is to do one effort and don't duplicate efforts when we go at project level or a country level. So you can identify there. And if we apply a theory of change there, also we can go to the micro level to harmonize the theory of change we are applying in the projects, in the interventions, in the country strategies or country programs. For example, Sabine was mentioning, we could join efforts, we could cooperate to have similar approaches to do country evaluation, or the micro level in terms of indicators to explain different phenomena. So if we harmonize that work, that collaboration, that cooperation, it's going to bring a wide result for all the institutions, but also the beneficiaries is going to speak the same language. We cannot be there at field level speaking different languages when we talk about impact or contribution to development of theory of change. Thank you.
No, thanks. To return to my other colleagues, this will also be your last chance to say anything. So, and try not to repeat what others have said. Megan.
Yeah, thank you. So many good questions. I'm sorry not to do justice. I think I would pull up on this point of the Sustainable Development Goals and what it means for us as evaluators. And coming back to, personally, my favorite part of the Agenda 2030 was the concept that it's a universal set of goals. And so I think we really do need to work on moving away from this idea that there are different species of countries and that we're focused on north-south or south-south collaboration, but really think more universally. And I think as we're here in Xi'an in China, I always find that I'm most hopeful about our chances of mitigating the climate crisis when I'm here in China, because I see such effective and fast action to reduce, for example, vehicle emissions from automobiles. And I think a lot of other countries could learn from that. And so I think we really should, as Sohini had mentioned, sort of take our own medicine, try to actually collaborate amongst each other and not let the reducing resources undermine our own collaboration, but really also this idea of working together universally to learn more quickly, because the imperative is for action and for accountability for effective action today. Thanks.
Thanks, Megan. Sabine.
Yeah, I was thinking about this initial question on joint evaluations and why we haven't been so successful in joint evaluations. And I think we need to think about things differently. When we talk about joint evaluations, we're talking about projects. But in fact, our functions don't do so much project evaluation. Most of the project evaluation is self-evaluation and validation work. And for that, I think the Mutual Reliance Initiative is very encouraging, and I was explaining my ideas also about monitoring and evaluation and learning systems at the country level. But most of the work we do is thematic, country level, sector level evaluation, and we need to think about how we can do that more jointly. And I think that the way to go forward with that is to do country-driven, country-level evaluation. We need to cooperate at that level. So I think the conversation of why we're not doing so much joint work is actually because we don't do so much project evaluation in the end also.
Thank you. Anyone else? Indran?
No, thank you very much. A quick point going back to the theme. Boundaries. Boundaries have given us certainty and predictability. They've now been blurred. But even though they've been blurred, we need to keep to the principle. And the principle is how do we use our craft in order to echo and to amplify the voice of the marginalized. Because ultimately what we are is about advancing development. And that means also rethinking and working in collaboration, in partnership, as difficult as it is. We know how difficult that can be. I think a lot can be learned from the National Evaluation Capacity Series of the UNDP, which has also been partnered with the Global Evaluation Initiative, where the whole focus has been on country-led, country-driven, and country-inspired evaluation. And if that happens, then we have a completely different conversation. Thank you.
Thank you, Indran. Last word, Véronique.
Yes, thank you very much for all the questions. On the joint mission, it's true that we don't do so much project level, but still we do some. And we do co-finance. Our institutions co-finance some projects, so there is still, I think, room for joint evaluation, but I fully agree that the way forward is more about coordinated evaluation of thematic country level. And I think it's even more feasible because we can still have our own evaluation, but if we could come together, identifying the country we're going to be looking at, and then each one we look at our own institutions' impact on the country, but we can agree on the indicators, we can agree on the approach, we can agree on having joint missions, and then we can still have different publications and then make sure that the results can be compared. I think that's not so difficult. We just need to try once or twice. So if we can find one topic and we start doing that. And, but we are not doing that even at the highest level. When talking about SDGs, it would have been quite expected that there would be common indicators, common approaches, but we haven't been able to do that. So we can do much better in this area. For the theory of change and how it can benefit the beneficiaries themselves or the countries or the private sector, it's true that our first objective is to make sure that our institution, in MDBs at least, that our institutions learn from their experience and what works, what didn't work, but that should include also the impact, direct and indirect effect on the beneficiaries. And I know that in EBRD we have still to work more on being able to go back to the private sector, provide the findings, the information, and have some ownership from them. It's a difficult task, but I think if we can manage to make evaluation also useful for the private sector and make that something that they can see not as a burden or an investment, but as a beneficial investment, then we could have a lot of traction. So let's try the private sector.
No, thanks. And just to add, hopefully a year from now, we'll be able to present to you the results of our evaluation of how ADB engages with civil society. And I know World Bank already has done that, so we'll be doing that. And just on the youth appeal, we didn't comment on that because I think we all agree with that we young people really need to be heard in this institution. Look, it's been a wonderful conversation, and the main headline that I think our colleagues have said is that we have been living in uncertain times, but expect more. But it's also an opportunity for us to be transformative. If we do three things, okay? First, okay, if we work together. Second, if we harness technology. And third, if we're agile in the right way and be responsive. Now, we've all talked about AI and how it hallucinates sometimes. And I've been thinking, in 10 years' time, when I'm back here in Sion, for other reasons, what would I want the headline to be? And I'd ask my colleagues to please run that headline. That's my headline. And with that, please join me in thanking our great panel and for a wonderful conversation.